Welcome to Spain. I'm Gaetano.
And I'm Tanya, and together we are two expats and friends sharing our experiences and observations about living our lives and raising our families here in Spain.
We hope you will find our podcast useful and perhaps funny.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Hey, Tanya, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I guess this is our first episode, so where the heck do we begin?
I don't know. This is exciting. We'll see.
Our audience, we have many guinea pigs listening to us. I hope. So I guess, so we're doing this podcast about our life in Spain. So I guess we should probably talk about how we got here.
Yeah, moving initially, because we both had very different experiences.
Different experiences and different times. You've been here longer than me. You're here now.
5 years.
5 years. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. Time flies.
It does. I've been here. Well, it's only been a year and a half, but it does feel like forever.
It feels like forever. I'm sorry. It feels like I've known you forever.
Yeah, I know. It's a little, but I'm a martyr. So. But I feel like, I was talking to my kids. I have 2 kids, by the way. I was talking to my kids, and we were just saying the other day how it feels like it was yesterday that we moved here, and it's also forever. And we're from Los Angeles before here, and it's like we don't even remember it anymore, right? Like I mean that in a good way too. That like this is really our home. We have definitely come home to Spain. So
yeah, I think that it was a very different experience when we moved, because we moved before COVID. So, just to kind of jump into that, we moved. Right. When people are posting on Facebook and they're like, we're nervous, we don't know how it's going to go. I'm like, we moved during COVID and Brexit, and we were trying to get our residency through my British citizenship, even though you can't tell from my accent. I am actually originally from England, but I lived
You can tell.
You say that as an American, but the British will be like, no, you can't tell. So I'm from this place now in the middle of America, the island in the middle of the Atlantic. Anyhow, so we moved, 5 days before the Spanish lockdown here in Spain.
Whoa.
So we got here, we were actually contemplating changing our flight, because I was getting nervous, because I was like, if we get stuck in America after planning everything and when we were going to move and school and everything, we will be very screwed, because we are not situated in America anymore. We've already kind of moved. We're just waiting for our flight. Everything's packed, everything's gone, the house is empty, and then our flight might have got canceled.
Can I ask you a side note question?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've moved right before COVID. So how long were you planning this move before you were waiting for your plane to take off? How long was your plan?
Quite quick. Probably, we had been talking about moving for a while, for a few years probably, just as maybe we should, there were a lot of things that were sort of coming up. COVID obviously wasn't, but we didn't know that was very quick, but we were talking about schools and getting into public schools where we came from Washington DC, but I had also lived in Los Angeles. I didn't know you then, but I lived in Los Angeles for many years before, and I moved to DC, met my husband there, had my child there, and she was about to move into public school. She was like 6. And so we were like, we need to move into public school. And I was very fearful, frankly, of doing that. And we started thinking about, healthcare, all these things that we were used to, because my husband's Moroccan, I'm from England. We know how things can work in those areas. And as you get older, you start thinking about these things more.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So,
but it was before you had actually had you already put wheels in motion before December 19th, which is December 2019, which is when COVID officially hit the scene, right? Granted, we know it was March 2020 when the world shut down, but the news started popping up in December of 19. So
yeah, I think we started really thinking and planning sort of, before that, maybe September, October, we started thinking, let's maybe do this.
So the COVID was really a coincidence and not an impetus, right?
No.
It was, right, okay.
I think what happened was we bought the tickets at some point when COVID wasn't existing. I had actually gone back to England that Christmas, and we were then we were like, we need to maybe, speed this up a little bit because it started looking a little crazy. And I mean, nobody was expecting a full-on lockdown like what happened in Spain. But when we got closer to our flight, there were murmurs of them maybe starting to cancel flights and things like that. So I was like, oh my God. So I was freaking out, but we didn't change our flight. We got on the flight. We got to Spain. We had 5 days. We visited the school. We went to Media Market and got a printer, thank God. And then that was it. We literally that was all we had, what we brought with us, and a printer. And that's what we had through the whole of because then it went into lockdown 5 days later. And
when did you arrive? In that March of 2020?
We arrived on March 9th. We went into lockdown on March 14th.
Because I think America went lockdown like the 20th, right? It was a few days later.
But very different, your lockdown to our lockdown.
How was it different?
We were 100% not allowed to leave the house. All the shops were closed. One person could go shopping for food, but you couldn't have more than one person in a car. And you were not allowed to leave the house unless you were like a nurse or a doctor. That was it. You were in the house. So we were in the house.
So it was a house arrest.
It was a house arrest for 3 months, it turned out. And it was going to be initially a couple of weeks. So we were house arrest in the house. They started loosening it up a little bit towards the end where they had times that people could go out. But again, you weren't allowed out with your whole family. One person could go out. It was very weird.
Right.
So this was how we moved. It was not stressful at all.
And you just brought suitcases, right? You didn't bring any furniture or lamps or anything, right? You didn't ship anything.
We decided that we didn't love any of our stuff that much. So we were, we didn't have a sort of family heirlooms or anything. So we were just like, let's just bring our stuff. We bought 12 massive suitcases, like giant bags. And we didn't really think of the logistics of that because going through the airport with that amount of bags was actually not ideal. But it worked, and it did mean that we did have everything with us. And because of COVID, had we shipped everything, God knows where it would have ended up and when it would have ended up somewhere, because that would have been completely uncontrollable at that point. I mean, for people that have shipped, it's already kind of a miscellaneous thing.
Yeah.
But if a lot of things got shut down, including the immigration services. So that was the other thing we were dealing with during lockdown, is they closed down the immigration system because a lot of the government, non-essential government closed down. Okay. And we were trying to get our residency before Brexit, which was happening in 2020 as well, not 2022.
Right.
2020 as well.
Right.
So it was fun. It was exciting. So if you're, for people that might be coming over under normal circumstances, it's super fine.
Totally. I mean, you came over, so Brexit, so you didn't have visas and stuff to worry about when you moved over, correct?
No, we didn't. We didn't need to do that.
You were still part of the EU and you're a British
citizen. So long as everything went according to plan, then we were fine and we didn't need to do that. So I do admire the people like you. So you came over and had to deal with visas before you arrived, correct?
Yeah, so similar to you, I mean, we moved here we arrived July 16th, 2023. I will have that day forever printed upon my head. And for me, similar situation, we had been living in Los Angeles, and I had lived in Los Angeles. I mean, when we left, I lived there for 22 years. And for the last 10 years, I had been wanting to leave because I had 2 daughters, and I wanted a house, and I wanted a bigger life. I wanted a better life, and things were just getting expensive. And we were navigating schools, and I was doing private schools and charter schools, and we did public school 1 year. So it was just a lot. Like, I'm like, well, this isn't the life I want to have for my kids, constantly in this kind of like struggle. And then, so I had been looking at other places in America, and then COVID happened, and we were stuck on our couch, and I started this fantasy play of looking at real estate around the world for cheap and all of that. And then I remember summer of 2020, I started fantasizing about Italy, living in southern Italy in a house with views of the Mediterranean. And
we've all seen that movie.
Yeah. So, exactly.
It's easy to fantasize about that, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. But then COVID lifted up, and it was still in the back of my head, and I was like, no, let's start really researching this. And Um, and then I started looking, and because we're in the process still, it's a very long process, but we're in the process of trying to get Italian citizenship. And and so I was like, we could move to Italy and become Italian citizens and be good. But then I started doing the deep dive. Then I started doing the real research of what would it be like for us to live in Italy, and where I wanted to move in Italy would not have made sense because the school system was not good. They did not have many private schools. I think they only really had one where I wanted to move, and it wasn't appealing, and it was very expensive for the private school. Everything else was cheap, and so I said, well, that's not going to make sense. And I was like, but I want to live in Europe. And once we get Italian citizenship, like, we could live anywhere in Europe. So I started doing the research of like France and Spain and other parts of Italy. And Spain became top of the list because there are so many international schools here. There are so many private school options, and compared to around the world, very reasonable, and especially in, in some of these, smaller cities, very reasonable compared to what they are in definitely Los Angeles. And in Italy and France, the private schools were prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, I mean, they're ridiculously expensive in America, but
yeah.
I mean, over here it varies greatly, even between the cities in Spain when you start looking at different cities, and then different countries for sure. Yeah, so that's definitely an aspect. Yeah.
I mean, Italy and France, they're about on par with American private school prices. Yeah. And here, like Barcelona's about half price of what LA one, but in Valencia is a lot less than that. So you're right, and Madrid is more expensive.
And we'll definitely.
Then it becomes a real.
Sorry.
The real estate becomes an issue. But anyway, so I was like, let's really look at it. So I was like, it's gonna be Spain, and so I kind of just stayed in the back of my mind, and then unfortunately my dad had passed away, and I looked at my kids and I was like, well, what are we doing here? I don't really have I don't have a tie to this country. I wasn't really working. I'm an actor and stuff, and I was like, I'm not really working. I don't really have something keeping us here. So let's do it. And that's how we did it. And then I had to then really did the deep dive into what it mean, like visas, what visa I needed to get. And I will say, so in my research, what I found out was these like Facebook groups, and I had no idea about Facebook actually being a useful tool. And that kind of changed my life, because to me, Facebook was just to rile up the masses and show pictures of food. And then there's like Americans in Valencia, Americans in Spain, Americans. And so I got this wealth of information. And then I was like, oh, I can do this.
Oh, wait, did you get your wealth of information from me? Because that's how we met.
Well, I don't want people to necessarily know all of our dirty details, but that is exactly how we met. Tanya gave me a ton of information.
Useless information, as it turns out.
I mean, I got our apartment through Facebook, but anyway.
Yeah, so when you moved, you did it very differently. We just flew over at the end of the day. But you have a much more creative way that you did it, and you were bringing a cat, and I know that is a whole different.
Cats.
Oh, 2 cats. I'm sorry. That's a whole other can of worms, is when you have to move with animals. So I think the way you did it was such a lovely experience for your girls and for you as well. So, share that.
Yeah. So we jumpstart. So we got our visas. I will say the process didn't take long. It was about 3 months of getting the paperwork. It wasn't stressful. I did it. But a year before we moved is when I made the decision, we're moving. It was July 2022. I said, we're going. And I said, how can I do it? And look at these Facebook groups. And I'm like, how do I move pets? What are flights like? What are the laws about how long they could be on? And I decided that we were going to take the Queen Mary 2 over, because it's the only boat at sea that you're allowed to have your pets on.
Such a great idea.
It was so amazing. It really was. It was the bougiest thing in the world, but it was also the most wonderful experience for the girls and I. And so we flew to New York. So here it is. I'm a single parent, and I have 2 kids. We had 7 suitcases, 3 backpacks, and 2 cats, and just 1 adult. And how I did this trip, to this day, I have no idea. I didn't know how I was doing it when I was doing it.
Yeah,
but I
I
did
don't know
it.
how we ridiculously decided to travel with 12 giant suitcases, and as it turns out, when we got to the Valencia airport, the security guy there, like the immigration customs guy, he was helping us with our carts. This is just to show you how nice the Spanish people are. He's looking at us. We've got two people and one tiny, like she was 7 at the time, child. And we've got like two carts with all these bags on. And he's like, let me help you. And then he's like, oh, do you have anything to declare? And we're like, well, this. But we couldn't even manage those carts. I mean, we did end up managing, but it was quite funny because the Valencia airport's really a small, nice kind of almost family
my
place.
favoriteest airport in the world.
So I can imagine you as one adult trying to do that.
It was insane. And so it's like we get to LA to the airport, and then they're like, the bags are overweight. And she's like, you can repack them. And I'm like, do you see what I've got around me?
Repack them?
Yeah, just repack them. Distribute the weight. And they charged me like $400 extra for the suitcases.
No.
And I was like, I'm going to lose it. But I have like, whatever. We got to New York. Spent 2 days in New York. We got on the boat. And I will tell you what was great about that for me and for the girls was we had 7 days at sea, no stops. And it allowed me to decompress from my life in America and arrive in Europe free and clear. And I hear your story and it kind of gives me a panic attack.
Oh,
because
totally.
I was like, if I was going to do a red-eye flight from LA to Spain, it would have probably taken me months to calm down.
That would have been a nightmare. And also, how was it for the cats being on a boat?
They were well, they had the time of their life. I mean, so there's a kennel. You don't get to have them in your stateroom or anything like that, but it's on the top floor. They have the best view, and
they get the top floor.
They get the top floor. Yeah, the kennel's on the top of the boat.
Oh, crazy!
And I'm sorry, ship, because if there's any Cunard people, are going to yell at me for saying boat.
Get it right.
A ship, and we were on a crossing, not a cruise, and so. They will let you know that in Facebook groups too.
Oh, they will.
Just beware. Yeah.
If anyone listens to this, I'm sure they'll correct us.
They'll correct us. But you get to go visit them up to like 4 hours a day. Now, mind you, we were up there for like 5 minutes, and we're like, all right, there they are. But no, they got the cats. They fed them fresh like poached salmon, sushi, sashimi.
Seriously?
Roasted chicken and beef. Oh yeah, they were feeding them like all this. Like, oh, do you mind if your cat has like, is your cat allowed to have this as a, And I'm like, sure. Well, when we got here, they didn't want to eat the kibble that I was serving for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Forever to adjust. Our one cat, we have a black cat named Raven and a gray one named Asher. Raven, the whole trip just hid. He did not like it, and Asher is my troublemaker, and he was in it all. And the kennel was loud. There's big dogs in there barking and stuff. So it's a scary space.
That could be a bit stressful.
A bit stressful. And then we got to England, and then we stayed with our friends for 2 nights, and it was actually their godmother flew to New York and did the voyage with us, which was great for me because it allowed me to really just decompress, and she could take the kids off my hands for a little bit or be a buffer, as we were all kind of changing our lives and kind of going into this unknown.
For sure. And then you're basically taking all your luggage to their house and then getting it to the airport and getting it to Valencia.
And then getting it to Valencia. Well, yeah, so what we did is we flew then from London to Madrid because you can't fly animals from London to Valencia.
Okay.
So,
oh my God.
So we had to do Madrid and then take a train from Madrid, and we had 3 hours. I had planned so we'd have a 3-hour layover between the plane landed and the train took off. Like, plenty of time. And everything's going smoothly, but we get there and a suitcase is lost.
I was going to say, you decided to take a train rather than like transfer your stuff let them transfer your stuff to another plane. That's brave.
Yes. Well, the reason why is we had come a year before to make sure we wanted to move here, right? And so we had done the train before, and for the cats and all of us, to sit 3 hours at layover for an airport for a flight to Valencia when we could already be on the ground there, and the cats having to go up in the air again.
True.
I was like, it would just be too much. This way we'd be on the ground and we can get settled, and the train station's right in the middle of town, and where we're moving isn't far from that. So I was like, it just made easier sense. And but they had lost our suitcase. So we spent 2.5 hours at the airport dealing with the lost suitcase
Oh
stuff.
no.
So when we arrived to the train station in Madrid, which thankfully is like not far from the airport odds, it was like a 7-minute cab ride. But we now only was down to 6 suitcases. So,
Oh, you never
so
got the
much
suitcase
easier.
then.
No,
So
we didn't get the suitcase back.
The suitcase did not arrive at that moment. So that's.
No, it did not arrive. So here I am. Now we have like 5 minutes to get on this train. And I kid you not, I am literally chucking our big suitcases down the escalator, down to the track. And then I cut my leg on the escalator, and I took a bandana and I turned a tourniquet around my leg, and we got on the train. And then I had 2 hours on the train to be like, oh. And then I was like, what did I just do?
Oh my God, that's
what
insane.
Did I do?
And did you they have carts at the Madrid train station to move your luggage?
I mean, I wasn't paying attention to that because we had 5 minutes. It wasn't like I was like, oh, can someone help me? Like, because you have to go through security with all your luggage at the train station.
You do?
So, yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know how you even manage that. All those bags. That's insane.
Well, I did have 2 kids, so they had 2 hands each.
Yeah.
And we could put a cat on top of the big suitcases and backpacks on our back. I mean, it was
a lot.
It was very good we lost that one suitcase, because that would have been harder to deal with. Granted, we would have had more time to deal with it, though, so there is that.
No, that's true.
So we're checking it down. We get here, and we were lucky, again, thanks to the Facebook groups, and another family that we're still very good friends with found us our apartment before we moved. So we already had our place lined up. So we moved into our home the day we arrived. So I didn't have to deal with hotels and that kind of thing.
That's very lucky, because I think it's quite hard to look for a place from afar. I think there's a lot of people that can get scammed and things, and it's a bit nerve-wracking to do that. We came over, and our plan was to spend like 2 weeks in an Airbnb and then look for a full-term, like a long-term apartment once we got here. And we were then going to get like a year's lease. And then while we did that, we were going to look around in order to buy a house and stuff. That was our plan. We ended up in the Airbnb for 4 months.
Whoa.
Because
did they give you like a discount because it was 4 months and they couldn't rent it out to anyone anyway?
I think we were very lucky because neither of us spoke Spanish very well. And the person that we were renting from, turns out her husband was from a place in Africa that spoke French. So he spoke French, which my husband speaks. So we were super lucky that we were in a place with somebody that we could communicate with, because they lived downstairs and we had the middle floor, and we actually had a terrace. And we were in this tiny, tiny village out in the middle of nowhere near Sagunto, in the middle of the orange fields. So that was also super lucky. So we kind of had an apartment there. We did actually end up in a place that had a kitchen and bathroom and everything to ourselves. And then we had access to a roof, which during the lockdown here, we were very lucky to have, because a lot of people were stuck in apartments like yours, which your apartment's gorgeous, but if you can't leave for 4 months, you're starting to lose your mind.
Oh, no, that's what I was going to say. So even to backtrack, during that 3 months of lockdown, could you even go to the beach with your family?
Oh, the beaches were closed. No, you weren't allowed anywhere. You were not allowed out of the house, like literally not allowed out of the house. One person could go food shopping, but you couldn't, like Media Market, like, Leroy Merlin, all these places were closed. Everything was closed. Were they doing
deliveries at least? Could you order stuff online?
No. I mean, and you looked out, because we had a roof and we could see the main like road that runs down the beach from there, and it was just, there were no cars on it, just trucks that were delivering food back and forth, because the only people that could move around was anything to do with food or medical, so there were no cars on the road. Jawad got stopped a few times going to get food because we had to leave our little village. He did all the food shopping, and he had to leave our little village to go to the next village where the main supermarket was. We only had like a tiny corner shop, which was also closed. So the pharmacies and the food shops were open. So he would get stopped by the police, like, where are you going? And of course, he didn't even know the names of of the villages we were going between, right? Right. And we were like, this is crazy. And we actually got lucky that our Google Maps was working, even though we didn't have a phone plan. For some reason, Google Map must have some kind of plan with everybody where they work, even when you don't have a phone service. And then we signed up for Lobster, which is a English-based phone plan where they they just mail the phone chip to you. And they have and they also have all their customer service in English and everything. And so they have a good plan, and you can have those chips mailed to you, which that was something that we could do during COVID. So we ended up getting that sorted. But it was, even Amazon, there was nothing on Amazon when we first got here. And I don't know if that's because Amazon hadn't really picked up yet in Spain, or whether it was COVID related. It's hard for us to know since we got here so close.
Right. I will say on the Amazon level, what the year and a half we've moved here, the scope of what's available has drastically improved. When we first arrived, I was like, there's not that much on Amazon, and now, so it could be didn't have maybe a little bit of both. It didn't have the footprint, and it was as the lockdown, because it's still not as like amazing as like Amazon in America, right? Where you can just get every single thing you could ever think of on it.
Yeah, it's definitely improved a lot if that's kind of what you want to have. And, I think like everybody, we try not to use Amazon too much and try to use the local shops. But, that's a whole other discussion about local shops and where to buy stuff and when they're open and things like that.
That'll be episode 4, people.
Yeah, but also deliveries. I mean, all these things kind of make it a little easier to sometimes go to a local shop, but none of the shops weren't open, so we could, we'd got printer paper for the printer, and of course our daughter went straight into, virtual school. And, she spent the most of lockdown, we were playing Minecraft with friends in the States. And so that was kind of a nice transition for her, that when we moved here, all her friends were also stuck at home somewhere else. But it was like she got to sort of stay in touch with all of her friends in a way that was nice, because we actually adjusted our time frame to be more like DC time frame, because it didn't matter to us whether we were up at 9 o'clock in the morning or up until 4 o'clock in the morning. It just didn't matter. So we kind of adjusted our time frame a little bit, but that was very unique. So when you first arrived, how was the transition for your girls? Because it was obviously a very different situation than when we first arrived, and for when I think yours is more normal.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, how we had planned the trip, I think, really helped. We had this, the girls had a time at sea to decompress. When our apartment is gorgeous, I'm very grateful to have it. It fell into our lap. I had put something on Facebook group saying, this is when we're moving, if anyone knows of anything. And there was another family leaving the week, the month before we arrived. So the apartment that's how we got the apartment. So when we arrived after this chaotic day, that was the worst day of our trip, was getting from London to Valencia. That was the most hectic of the entire move process.
But that's what most people's move looks like. Completely, I think. Getting on a plane with all their whatever stuff they've decided to take with them. And some people can manage to come with a small amount of stuff, but bearing in mind you're probably not going to see or ship things for a while, you're probably bringing a lot of things. So you are...
And we did ship, so we had stuff that was coming whenever it decided to come.
Exactly, but you need to bring something, and you need to bring enough.
Yeah, we had, and I will say we got rid of a lot of our clothes, because I was like, we'll just buy new. I've had young kids. I'm like, you're going to grow by the end of the summer, so let's just buy new stuff. But it was a lot of paperwork, a lot of those kind of things, jewelry, those kinds of things were in the suitcases. But when we arrived we opened the door to the apartment, and this apartment is so much better than what we could have had in LA. So for what I was paying in LA, we have our apartment now, and the kids were like, oh, this is where we get to live. They get their own bedrooms, and our quality they just saw that the reason why we moved is because I wanted a better quality of life for us, for what I could afford. And it showed on their faces the moment I opened the door. They were like, oh, this is okay.
This is nice.
We're on board. On board. And
you're in a nice neighborhood and a cute neighborhood. So even just walking to the apartment is a lovely experience.
Exactly. I mean, that first night we went out, we had we were lucky. The real estate agent who facilitated the deal did an IKEA delivery for us. So we had a mattress on the floor, and we had 4 forks and 4 plates. We had stuff to get us through until we could go furniture shopping that week. But we had KFC, and I'll tell you, I missed that first night of having a bucket of KFC on
That's
the floor
what you did,
with the mattress.
KFC?
Yeah, because there's one like 2 blocks from us.
Oh my God, you're so American.
And we'd actually planned that before, because I looked at Google Maps and there's a KFC, and my youngest Paloma was like, can we get KFC on our first night. Like we'd planned that, so that was already the plan because we moved here on a Sunday. So it wasn't we didn't know what was going to be open because we knew things were different in Spain. But so we had that summer, and then there's this woman I met on Facebook who said, "Oh no, you have to have a play date this week." And I said, "I don't know, it's our first week." And she said, "No, you need to. It'll help your daughters acclimate to their new life here if they meet another kid their age." And that woman's name was Tanya, who I'm talking to right now. So like 3 days after we arrived, we're up in the mountains for a pool party.
Well, that's true, right? Yeah. And in all fairness, we were going to meet you when you first came for your little, scouting trip, but you all got COVID.
We all got COVID. Thanks for reminding me of that little trip.
Yeah, yes. So I was like, we'll catch you next time. But it was really lovely because our girls got along like immediately, I think. And I have, for me personally, in the times that I've moved in my life without family and kids and everything, as soon as you meet people, it does make you feel much more at home. And I think for the kids where you're worried and wondering how they're going to adjust, as soon as they have friends, they're good. Like they're just right. Golden. So I think it makes a difference. And obviously it helped that we all got along a little.
It did. It did. And I will have to say, part of the transition too is there was other people through Facebook that I met that were moving here the same week that we did and that we're still friends with. I will say that, it's a question many people have asked is how are you assimilating, how are your kids getting along, how are you finding friends, what's your social life like? And I have to say, it's better than it was in America because there are a lot of expats here. And we're a desperate bunch. We're a desperate bunch to meet people. So everyone is much more outgoing now because they're not set into their lives, right? They don't have their bubble.
Right. Oh, you mean everyone's desperate, not just you.
Right. Oh, okay. All the expat community is like, oh, here's this person, here's this person, here's this.
It's so true.
There's 50,000 WhatsApp groups. I mean, it was so quickly that people are like, come on over, we're desperate to meet you, right? Like it's just because we need people with our similar and not even similar backgrounds. We're just not Spanish, and so breaking into that Spanish bubble is harder. But it would be just the same as if we moved to Atlanta. We're probably going to facilitate to people who are newer to Atlanta versus someone whose whole life and community is there.
Yeah.
And if we're not part of that, it's hard to break into it. Right?
Yeah, and we were lucky with the school. I mean, especially I think everyone just felt really, really sorry for us, so we had that going for us at the time. But people from the school were like super nice and were connecting with my daughter on sort of WhatsApp and Zoom and things, sort of because everyone was stuck at home. And I mean, we were the sad like people that had moved right before lockdown and were just stuck at home in a country where they didn't know anybody. And we didn't know anybody. I think like you, we didn't know anybody when we moved here. We didn't have family here or anything. So we were like you, initially coming and very excited to build our community here with new people. Right. All new. It was going to be all new people.
I'm surprised that part never seemed scary to me because were you hearing you say it out loud? God, that sounds really scary. And that was not the thing that was scary to me. I mean, nothing was really scary about moving here, but it didn't hold me back for sure. Like I said, actually both my mom had died right before we moved as well. So I had no like nuclear family to take care of, to think about.
Yeah.
So,
but you're not very outgoing, so I could see that might be a concern.
I'm a little bit of a hermit.
You.
Yeah.
I think it does. I think if you've ever moved, you know that it's important to get out and meet people, and that is very easy here to do. Right. And it's easier, obviously, too, if you have kids. Like, I know people that come and they have a bit of a harder time because they don't have the kids automatically making friends, and you don't have the excuse with the kids to get together and things like that. So I think kids does make it easier, for sure.
I think for you, it definitely made it easier, though, because she was younger when you moved here.
Mm-hmm.
We moved, and, as the kids get older, parents are less involved in the school.
That's
so
true.
For like for my daughters, like their friends, I've met their friends' parents, I think most of them by now, but it's not like I saw them in the schoolyard. My kids take a bus to school, and the schools, unlike America, I don't know, because we go to different schools.
Yeah.
Our kids go to different schools, but our school, there's no parental involvement in the school. And they made it very clear, like,
Yeah.
no, like when I was laughing is when I was interviewing schools the year before, I was telling them, oh, I do the gala committee, I do all these things. I'm trying to sell myself like I had to do back in America.
That doesn't exist.
And she looked at me like I was speaking a language, a Klingon. She's like, what do you mean you help out with the school?
Yeah. But we
I'm like,
had,
"Don't-"
yeah, and we had like, initially when we moved, she had already been invited to a birthday party, you know, which didn't happen because of COVID.
Okay,
But
okay.
that was really nice. We got most schools, if you're going into the private schools, will probably have like a WhatsApp group for your class. And that's what we got on before we even moved. And through that, and through being added to that WhatsApp group for her class, somebody invited her, which, like you said, at that age, she was 7. Yeah, they're inviting the whole class to a birthday party.
Right.
Mostly. So she got invited to a birthday party. So we already had that scheduled before we even moved. And that was that made me feel better that she had something coming, you know, social. So.
Right.
Yeah. But I think overall, you know, all the things that we might have been, I think I was most nervous about the actual logistics of moving, not getting things done and assimilating once we got here. That for me, I think, was how I felt about it. It's all the things you have to do, and if you have to get visas and getting all that stuff together, and we still had to gather a lot of paperwork for our residency paperwork. So, and that will, again, everything needs to be only the most 3 months old, right? So
it's the same as that too.
It
your
is.
documents they expire
like
at a
your
certain
birth
time.
certificate, it expires right after 3
Like
months. So it's like, and
did you have to get your birth certificate like apostilled, like you did, like
We
you have to
did.
get that double
we
stamped?
had a friend that was willing to drive it down to Richmond and get it done, but unfortunately, because it was COVID, everything was closed, so everything had to be done via mail. And then we had to get it to Spain during COVID when things weren't functioning properly. So just that was very stressful because it was like it could have taken us a month to get it apostilled in Virginia, and then it had to come over to us. And you know what I mean? So the logistics
Right.
of doing that. But I think normally those things are much, I mean, it is stressful to get all those things done. But I think when everything's functioning properly, it's totally feasible. You know, and if you have a friend that if you're in Spain and you have a friend that can go and get something apostilled for you or something over there and send it to you, those are some good things to have, I think.
Right. Yeah, I mean, for me, because I had decided a year before that it was definite, I plotted out. I had time to plot it out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the move. It's like the before wasn't so stressful for me. I was more excited by it because this was really happening, and I knew what the timelines were. And I was lucky to live in Los Angeles, where the State Department has an office, and everyone had an office.
Yeah.
So, and the Spanish consulate had an office. And
Yeah.
I've seen people like they don't answer the phones, they don't return emails. I need information. I was able just to drive down there and like stand by the window until they
Totally.
would speak to
And
me
we were-
then get all my
Yeah, and we were in DC, so we had everything.
Right.
But I think that both of us were quite lucky. Some people are doing it in more remote places where it's
and have to buy
probably-
airplane tickets and then
Oh
find
my
out they
God.
don't have the right applications,
Yeah.
the right stuff filled out, or it's expired. So I was looking at. I think they just gave us the visa because they were sick of seeing me. I think they were like,
I think so, too.
I don't want to see him anymore.
we would pop into the Spanish consulate, whatever they had in DC, not the embassy, but yeah, it was probably the embassy, but it was a part of the embassy where you can go and ask questions and stuff. And I think they got a little sick of us too. They're like, can you
Right.
just give these people what they want?
Exactly.
But it's nice to have that. And I think they're, you know, not to oversell Facebook. I mean, I got a lot of information too. You know, it wasn't just you. Like, I was getting all the information, but by the time you were coming around, we had already been here for a couple of years. So, and I felt a lot more confident about that I could give advice that would be helpful, you know, hopefully.
Right. And you did. You were fantastic. And there was other people that had been fantastic.
A lot of people, yeah.
Too. And yeah, again, not to oversell it, but it was a world about Facebook I never knew existed.
Me too.
I never knew about these groups, and I don't even know how I even entered into that wormhole of Facebook groups to find this information. I don't know if I Googled it or what. I don't know how it came about.
I don't think you need to Google things, because as soon as you started Googling and looking at videos about Valencia, Facebook was popping up suggestions. You might want this
probably
group. But
I'm like, we meet a group. Who knows?
Right?
Go
but
back
in this
time,
instance,
right?
the groups are very helpful, and people
Yeah.
are, and you can search the groups. I mean, we would search the groups for information, and then but people are very helpful, and I think everybody understands how stressful it is. But I also want to say, I think it's hard sometimes to distinguish between stress and excitement.
Right.
And you have both in mounds when you're planning a move like this. And it's hard to know, am I feeling stressed or am I actually just super excited? Is a little bit of both. But I think we tend to think that it's all stress. But I think a lot of it is excitement. And it's important to be also excited while you're stressed.
Right. I agree. I think we're probably running out of time for our listeners, but we got to pick this up next time. So stay tuned. We hope you like our show.
We have a lot of crazy stories, so
A lot more.
just a few.
All right, bye y'all.
Hey, can't get enough of us? Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Our Spain Podcast.
And on our website, ospain.com, which we will be updating with exciting new things as we grow.
We would love for you to message us with any topics you would like to hear about.
See you next time.
Bye.